My name is Sarah R. Fussell, and I'm 28 years old. 6 months into what I thought was a committed relationship, my boyfriend leaned toward me at a crowded party and whispered, "Don't call me your boyfriend in public. It's too much pressure." At first, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I met Daniel through a mutual friends group chat. We both worked corporate jobs in the same mid-sized city. I was in finance, steady hours, long-term planning, security. Daniel worked in marketing and seemed to thrive on creative campaigns, networking events, and being surrounded by people. He was outgoing and spontaneous. I was more structured. Somehow, it worked. We'd get coffee downtown, hike nearby trails, spend lazy Sundays watching shows at my apartment. After a couple of months, we'd had the exclusivity conversation. At least, I believed we had. I didn't keep other men around as backup options. I didn't flirt with coworkers. When Daniel had a terrible week at work, I'd bring his favorite Thai food and help clean his apartment while he finished presentations. Once he mentioned wanting to try a cooking class, so I booked one for us even though my culinary skills barely extended beyond reheating leftovers. I rearranged my schedule for him. The biggest sacrifice happened about a month before that party. My company offered me a promotion that would have involved frequent travel. Daniel hated the idea. "I barely see you enough already," he said. "I don't want every weekend wondering which city you're in." So I declined it. At the time, I called that commitment. Looking back, I think Daniel called it convenience. There had been signs. He always had an excuse for why I hadn't met his family. "They're judgmental. Let's keep this fun for now." On social media, he'd post pictures where I was clearly beside him, but never tag me or describe us as a couple. Then came the comparisons. My ex used to just wake up and decide we were driving somewhere. He'd laugh around friends. She was crazy spontaneous. The implication was obvious. I was predictable. One night I noticed messages from a woman he'd met at a marketing conference. Nothing explicit, but there were enough flirty emojis to make my stomach tighten. When I asked, Daniel barely looked up. "It's networking, Sarah. Don't be insecure." I wanted to trust him, so I swallowed the discomfort. Then came the party. Around 20 people were packed into our friend's house, music spilling through the living room while everyone drifted between conversations. I ran into two friends I hadn't seen in months. "This is my boyfriend Daniel," I said naturally. Daniel smiled. 5 minutes later, near the kitchen, he pulled me close. "Don't call me your boyfriend in public." I stared at him. "What?" "It's too much pressure." The room suddenly felt strangely quiet despite the music. "We've been together 6 months. Daniel rolled his eyes. "Exactly. Only 6 months. Labels make everything intense. It feels like you're locking me down." I felt heat creep into my face. "So what exactly are we?" "We're having fun." "Are we exclusive?" He hesitated just long enough. "I need space to figure out if this is really what I want." That hesitation hurt more than the answer. The next morning, we met at a coffee shop. Daniel stirred his drink calmly. "Therapy has made me realize I shouldn't settle too soon," he explained. "You're great, stable, sweet, but sometimes I wonder if there's someone more exciting out there." I stared at him. He actually smiled. "If you care about me, you'll understand. We can keep seeing each other. Just no titles. Nobody gets trapped." I let the silence stretch between us. Then I nodded. "Okay." His whole face brightened. "Seriously? No labels." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This is why I like you. No drama." I smiled faintly, but something inside me had already gone cold. Daniel thought I'd agreed to keep giving him all the benefits of being my boyfriend, without asking him to actually be one. He was wrong. If he didn't want the title, I decided he wouldn't get the privileges either. And that was when our relationship truly began to end. After that conversation at the coffee shop, I gave Daniel exactly what he said he wanted. Space. No public labels. No assumptions. No pressure. But what he didn't seem to understand was that removing the word boyfriend also changed the way I treated him. I stopped planning my weekends around his schedule. If my coworkers invited me out after work, I went. If friends wanted to hike on Saturday morning, I didn't check whether Daniel had something planned first. I stopped doing his laundry when he was overwhelmed. I stopped rearranging meetings so I could bring him dinner. And when another opportunity came up at work, I didn't immediately ask myself how it might affect him. At first, Daniel didn't notice. That almost hurt more. For a while, he seemed perfectly happy with our new arrangement. He could call me when he wanted company, disappear when something more interesting came up, and never explain himself because, technically, we had no labels. But I noticed things. The conference woman kept appearing in his messages. There were nights Daniel would tell me he was too exhausted to meet. Then I'd see pictures online of him at networking events or bars with coworkers. When I asked about plans, he'd say, "Sarah, remember what we talked about. Don't make this heavy." So I stopped asking. Some evenings, sitting alone in my apartment, I wondered if I'd somehow become the unreasonable one. Maybe I really was too structured, too predictable, too serious. Then I remembered that I had declined a promotion because Daniel didn't want me traveling. That wasn't predictability. That was sacrifice. And he had accepted every sacrifice without hesitation. Slowly, I started reclaiming parts of myself I'd neglected. I went back to the gym consistently. I started reading again instead of spending every free evening waiting for Daniel to decide whether he wanted to see me. I reconnected with friends I'd barely spoken to during those 6 months. One Friday, my friend Melissa dragged me to trivia night at a downtown bar. "You've been acting like you're 80, she teased. "Come outside." I almost canceled. I'm glad I didn't. That's where I met Ethan. He was sitting with another group we vaguely knew, and after our teams merged because half the people didn't show up, we ended up beside each other. He was easy to talk to. No performance, no games. When I mentioned working in finance, he didn't joke that I must be boring. He asked what I liked about it. When I told him I'd recently started getting back into hiking, he smiled. "There's a trail north of the city that's incredible in the fall." Then he added, "If you'd ever want company, I'd love to go." Clear. Simple. No strategic ambiguity. We exchanged numbers. I didn't immediately think of it as anything serious. Daniel and I hadn't officially ended things, but whatever relationship we'd had was already hanging by a thread he'd insisted on cutting thinner. I went on a hike with Ethan the following weekend. Then coffee. Then dinner. After our third real date, he looked across the table and asked, "Can I be direct about something?" My stomach tightened automatically. I'd grown used to direct conversations ending badly. "Sure. I like you." I waited. "And I'm not dating other people," he continued. "I'm not asking you to promise me anything tonight. I just don't want you wondering where I stand." For a second, I didn't know what to say. The clarity almost felt suspicious because I'd spent months being trained to believe commitment was pressure. Eventually, I smiled. "Thank you for saying that." 2 months after Daniel's first party incident, another gathering came up with the same general friend group. By then, Daniel and I barely spoke outside group settings. Ethan and I had become exclusive. And unlike Daniel, Ethan had never acted embarrassed by what we were. I arrived with him. The house was crowded, music playing, familiar faces everywhere. Someone I hadn't seen in months approached us. "Sarah, who's this?" I glanced at Ethan. Then I said the words naturally. "This is my boyfriend, Ethan." His hand settled lightly against my back. No hesitation, no panic, no whispered correction. Across the room, I saw Daniel. He'd heard me. His smile disappeared almost instantly. For a moment, he just stared. His eyes moved from Ethan to me, then back again. I expected anger. Instead, his face crumpled. He turned away quickly and walked toward the door. A few minutes later, Melissa came over. "Daniel just left." I nodded. "Is that bothering you?" I thought about it. A small part of me did feel something. Not guilt exactly. Maybe grief for what I'd once hoped Daniel and I could become. But mostly, I felt relief. He had asked me not to call him my boyfriend, because the word created too much pressure. I respected his request. I stopped using the word. Then, when I found a man who wasn't afraid of it, I used it for someone else. Daniel had wanted freedom from commitment. That night, he finally understood that freedom worked both ways, and apparently, he hated it. After the second party, I assumed Daniel would finally understand that whatever existed between us was finished. I was wrong. For a while, though, I heard almost nothing from him directly. What I knew came through mutual friends, usually without me asking. Daniel had started seeing a woman named Vanessa, someone he'd met through one of his networking events. From the descriptions, she sounded almost exactly like the kind of person Daniel had spent months telling me he wanted. Spontaneous, adventurous, unpredictable. Vanessa was a freelance photographer who traveled constantly for shoots. One weekend, she'd be in another city. The next, she'd send Daniel a message at midnight asking him to meet her at some bar because she'd suddenly decided staying home was boring. Apparently, Daniel loved it at first. Pictures started appearing online of rooftop parties, road trips, concerts, and last-minute weekends away. Melissa showed me one accidentally while scrolling through her phone. Daniel looked thrilled. I felt surprisingly little. Maybe because I finally understood something. He hadn't wanted a better relationship. He'd wanted a more exciting feeling. And feelings change. A few weeks later, the pictures stopped. Then, the stories started. Vanessa borrowed money from Daniel for photography equipment and kept delaying repayment. She'd disappear for days, then come back acting as though nothing had happened. When Daniel questioned her, she'd accuse him of being controlling. At photo shoots, she openly flirted with male models. When he got jealous, she reportedly laughed. "Don't be insecure." When Melissa told me that, I almost choked on my coffee. Those were almost the exact words Daniel had used when I questioned his flirty messages months earlier. The relationship deteriorated quickly. Daniel apparently wanted reassurance. Vanessa wanted freedom. Then, after one major argument, she disappeared entirely. Blocked his number. Removed him from social media. Within weeks, she was publicly dating another man from her photography circle. Daniel was devastated. And unfortunately, the fallout followed him into work. His marketing performance started slipping. He missed deadlines, arrived late, and botched an important campaign presentation after becoming visibly emotional halfway through. His manager had already warned him twice. The third time, he was fired. No dramatic confrontation, just a meeting, a polite explanation, and a cardboard box containing his desk belongings. That was when my phone lit up. "Hey Sarah, been a while. How are you? I miss talking to you." I deleted it. The next day, I know things ended weirdly. "Could we get coffee? I could really use a friend." No response. Then came the voicemail. "Sarah, please pick up. Vanessa turned out to be completely different from what I thought. She used me. I finally understand what you were trying to give me. You were stable. You were good to me. I took that for granted." Stable. Again. Always stable. Like I was a retirement account instead of a woman he'd supposedly loved. His calls continued until one evening someone repeatedly buzzed my apartment intercom. Ethan was with me. We checked the security camera. Daniel stood downstairs, pacing near the entrance. His hair was messy, his eyes red. "Sarah, I know you're upstairs," he said into the intercom. "Please, we need to talk. I messed everything up. I need you." Ethan looked at me. "You okay?" There wasn't accusation or jealousy in his voice, just concern. "Yeah." I switched off the buzzer. It's his problem now. Daniel eventually left. But the next morning, his older sister Mia messaged me. "Daniel is falling apart and you're making it worse. You embarrassed him by showing up with another man. Give him closure." I stared at the message. Then his mother called from an unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Sarah, this is Linda." My shoulders tightened. "I've heard what you've done to Daniel." "What I've done?" "You pressured him with labels, then paraded another boyfriend around when he was struggling. Now Vanessa dumped him and he's lost his job. He needs support." I almost laughed at the absurdity. With respect, Daniel told me he didn't want commitment. I accepted that. He made a mistake. And I'm not responsible for fixing it. Her voice sharpened. Family doesn't abandon people when they're hurting. We're not family. Silence. Then I added, please don't call me again. I hung up. After that, Daniel's apologies changed. How can you be this cold? Then, enjoy your boring new relationship. Eventually, Ethan will realize how predictable you are too. There it was. The same cruelty hidden beneath all the regret. Daniel didn't miss me enough to respect me. He simply missed having access to me. So I blocked his number, his social media, and every remaining doorway back into my life. Peace returned. But our mutual friend Tom's wedding was approaching. Daniel was invited. So was I. And deep down, I knew our story wasn't finished yet. Tom's wedding arrived on a warm Saturday evening at an outdoor venue just outside the city. String lights stretched above the reception area, glowing against the darkening sky. Music drifted across the lawn while people laughed around cocktail tables. And for the first time in months, I felt completely at ease. Ethan stood beside me. He looked good in his suit, but more importantly, I never had to wonder whether he wanted people to know we were together. He introduced me naturally. This is my girlfriend, Sarah. Every time he said it, there was no hesitation, no fear, no whispered correction afterward. I hadn't realized how exhausting uncertainty was until I experienced the opposite. My career was going well too. When another promotion opportunity appeared, the same kind of advancement I'd once rejected because Daniel complained about me traveling, I accepted it. Ethan's response had been simple. You worked for this. Take it. No guilt, no manipulation, just support. During cocktail hour, I spotted Daniel across the lawn. He was alone. His suit looked slightly rumpled, and he held a drink while everyone else moved around him in groups. For a moment, I felt sad. Not because I wanted him back, because I remembered the Daniel I'd once believed in. Then he noticed me. His eyes moved immediately to Ethan. I knew what was coming. During the reception, while speeches were beginning, Daniel walked straight toward our table. Several people noticed. Sarah. I looked up. Daniel. We need to talk. No, we don't. His face tightened. I've been trying to reach you. You blocked everything. That was intentional. People nearby suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Daniel's voice cracked. I was wrong, okay? He gestured helplessly. The whole label thing was stupid. Vanessa was a disaster. She lied to me, used me, then disappeared. I lost my job. Everything fell apart. I stayed quiet. Then he said the part I had expected. But you were real. Ethan remained beside me without interfering. Daniel continued. You were stable, loyal. You actually cared about me. We can start again. Labels. No labels. Whatever you want now. I almost couldn't believe the irony. Months earlier, calling him my boyfriend had supposedly trapped him. Now he was offering me any label necessary to get me back. You still don't understand, I said. Daniel blinked. You told me commitment was pressure. You told me you needed freedom to explore whether there was someone more exciting. His eyes dropped. So I gave you exactly what you asked for. I made a mistake. You made choices. Tears appeared in his eyes. Sarah, please. I kept my voice calm. I rebuilt my life because you taught me something important. He looked hopeful for half a second. I learned that I should never have to convince someone to be proud of being with me. Ethan's hand quietly found mine beneath the table. Daniel stared at our joined hands. So that's it? You're choosing him? No. His expression shifted. I already chose myself long before Ethan came along. That seemed to hurt more. Daniel's face flushed. But I need you. Everything fell apart without you. That isn't my responsibility. He shook his head rapidly. You can't seriously be this heartless. There it was again. The moment kindness stopped serving him, he called it cruelty. I leaned back slightly. Remember what you told me at the coffee shop? His eyes narrowed. You said you needed freedom to focus on your own growth. I paused. So do that. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Daniel turned and walked away. I heard later that he left the wedding early, alone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. A few days later, I changed my number and closed the final door he might use to reach me. Life moved forward. My promotion brought more responsibility and occasional travel, exactly what I'd once sacrificed. Ethan encouraged every step. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was clear. When someone asked who I was, he didn't call me a friend. When someone asked who he was to me, I never had to calculate which answer would make him uncomfortable. Sometimes I think back to that first party. Daniel leaning toward me. "Don't call me your boyfriend in public. It's too much pressure." At the time, those words humiliated me. Now I'm grateful for them. Because I listened. I stopped calling him my boyfriend. Eventually, I stopped treating him like one. And when I finally met someone who wanted that place in my life, I gave the word to a man who wasn't afraid to deserve it. Daniel wanted freedom from commitment. I gave it to him. The part he never understood was that once I became free too, I had no reason to go back.